The letter trembled in Hannah Morgan's hands as the stagecoach rumbled to a stop, dust swirling around the weathered sign that read, Douglas, Wyoming Territory, 1878. After 3 weeks of grueling travel from Boston, she had finally arrived at what would be her new home, and to meet the man who would be her husband. "Last stop, Douglas," the driver called, his voice carrying over the sound of stomping horses. Hannah gathered her skirts and the small carpet bag containing all her worldly possessions. At 22, she had made the decision that had shocked her remaining family, to become a mail-order bride to a rancher in Wyoming. Life in Boston had become unbearable after her parents' passing, left her with mounting debts and few prospects. "You sure this is where you want to get off, miss?" the driver asked, eyeing the quiet town skeptically as he helped her down. "Ain't much here." "Yes, thank you," Hannah replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite her nerves. She brushed dust from her navy traveling dress and adjusted her bonnet. "I'm expected at the Silver Creek Ranch. Mr. Levi Owens should be waiting for me." The driver's expression changed to one of recognition. "Owens's place? That's a good 5 miles northwest of town." "He was supposed to meet me here," Hannah said, looking around the dusty main street. A handful of buildings lined each side, a general store, a saloon, a small church, and what appeared to be a sheriff's office, but there was no sign of anyone waiting for her. "I can take you out there for an extra $1, the driver offered, getting late in the day. Hannah bit her lip, calculating the few coins remaining in her purse. "I think I'll inquire in town first. Perhaps he left a message." With a shrug, the driver unloaded her trunk and departed, leaving Hannah standing alone on the boardwalk. She smoothed her hands over her skirt, trying to calm her racing heart. This was not how she had imagined beginning her new life. The general store seemed the most approachable establishment. A bell jingled as Hannah pushed open the door, the scent of coffee, leather, and sundries greeting her. "Afternoon," called a round-faced woman behind the counter. "What can I help you with, dear?" "Good afternoon," Hannah replied, setting down her bag. "My name is Hannah Morgan. I've come from Boston to meet Levi Owens of Silver Creek Ranch. We have an arrangement." Her cheeks warmed at the implication. "Was supposed to meet me when the stage arrived." The shopkeeper's face fell slightly. "You're the bride Levi sent for?" Hannah nodded, a knot of worry forming in her stomach. "Oh, honey," the woman sighed. "I'm Martha Wilson. My husband and I run this store. I'm afraid Levi hasn't been into town for nearly 2 weeks." "Is something wrong?" Hannah asked, her hands clutching the counter for support. Martha hesitated. "Not exactly wrong, but Levi's been keeping to himself since his brother passed this winter. That ranch is mighty empty these days." She paused. "You didn't get a letter?" "A letter? No, our last correspondence was his confirmation of my arrival date. That was nearly a month ago." Martha's brow furrowed with concern. "Well, I can't let you head out there alone this late. You can stay with us tonight, and my husband can take you out to Silver Creek in the morning." Hannah wanted to protest, to insist that there must be some misunderstanding, but exhaustion from her journey won out. "That's very kind. Thank you." That night, sleep eluded her as she tossed and turned in the Wilsons' spare room. What awaited her at Silver Creek Ranch? Had Levi Owens changed his mind about wanting a wife? Had she traveled all this way for nothing? Morning came with soft golden light filtering through lace curtains. After a hearty breakfast, James Wilson hitched his wagon and helped Hannah load her trunk. "Silver Creek's got good water, fertile soil," James commented as they rattled along a narrow trail cutting through vast grasslands. "Levi's got himself a fine piece of land. His pa chose well when he settled here." "What kind of man is he?" Hannah asked, trying to picture the face that might match the neat, straightforward handwriting from their letters. James considered the question. "Honest, hard-working, keeps to himself mostly, especially since Thomas died. They were close, those brothers." The journey continued in companionable silence until James pointed to a rise in the distance. "There it is, Silver Creek." Hannah's heart quickened as the ranch came into view. A modest 2-story house stood amid several outbuildings, all looking well-built but somehow lifeless. No smoke rose from the chimney. No animals roamed the yard, and the fields that should have held cattle appeared empty. As they pulled into the yard, Hannah scanned for any sign of life. The porch was swept clean, the windows intact, but an air of abandonment hung over everything. "Mr. Owens," James called, helping Hannah down from the wagon. "Levi, you got company." Silence answered them. James frowned, then headed toward the barn, while Hannah stood awkwardly beside her trunk, her hopes sinking with every passing moment. "Wagon tracks are fresh," James noted when he returned. "He's been here recently." "Perhaps I should return to town with you," Hannah suggested, fighting back tears of disappointment. "Let me check the house first." James knocked firmly on the door, waited, then tried the handle. It opened easily. "Levi," he called into the dimness. Hannah followed hesitantly, stepping into a tidy but sparse main room. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, a wooden table with 4 chairs sat in the center, and a rocking chair faced the window. Everything was neat, but coated with a fine layer of dust. "This doesn't make sense," James muttered. "Looks like he ain't been living in the house." A sound from outside drew their attention, the distant thunder of hoofbeats. Hannah rushed to the window in time to see a lone rider approaching from the eastern pasture. Even from a distance, she could tell he sat tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the morning sky. "That'll be him," James said, relief evident in his voice. Hannah smoothed her pale blue dress and touched her carefully pinned hair, suddenly nervous about the imminent meeting. This man who had written such practical, honest letters was about to become her husband. The rider dismounted with fluid grace, tying his horse to the hitching post. Hannah could now see he was tall, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair beneath his wide-brimmed hat. His clothing was dusty, but well kept, a sign of a man who took pride in his appearance despite his labor. When he saw James's wagon, he paused, then strode purposefully toward the house. Hannah stepped back from the window, her heart hammering against her ribs. The door opened, and Levi Owens filled the frame, broad-shouldered, lean-hipped, with a face weathered by sun and wind. His eyes, startlingly blue against his tanned skin, widened as they fell upon Hannah. "Mr. Wilson," he greeted, his deep voice carrying a note of confusion. "I wasn't expecting visitors." "Nor a bride, it seems," James replied pointedly. "This is Miss Hannah Morgan, from Boston." Levi's gaze snapped back to Hannah, recognition dawning. "Miss Morgan, I—" He removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at the ends. "I didn't realize you were arriving yesterday." Hannah summoned her courage. "Your last letter confirmed the date, Mr. Owens. I've traveled quite a distance to be here." A flush crept up Levi's neck. "I apologize for not meeting you. There's been—" he gestured vaguely. "Things have been difficult since my brother passed." An uncomfortable silence fell. James cleared his throat. "Well, I should be heading back to town. Unless—" he glanced between them. "I'll be fine," Hannah assured him, though she was far from certain. After James departed, Hannah and Levi stood awkwardly in the main room, the weight of their arrangement hanging between them. "You must be tired from your journey," Levi finally said, gesturing toward the stairs. "The bedroom is prepared." "I've been sleeping in the bunkhouse," Hannah blinked in surprise. "You haven't been living in your own home?" Something like grief flashed across Levi's face. It felt too empty after Thomas died. The simple honesty of his statement touched something in Hannah. "I'm sorry about your brother." Levi nodded once, sharply, as if accepting her condolence physically pained him. He moved to pick up her trunk. "I'll show you upstairs." The bedroom was clean, but sparse, a bed with a quilt, a bureau, a small table with a wash basin. Through the window, Hannah could see the vast expanse of prairie stretching to distant mountains. "It's not much," Levi said, setting down her trunk. "Not what you're used to in Boston, I expect." "It's lovely," Hannah replied, surprised to find she meant it. Despite the emptiness, she could see the potential in this place. "Where are your cattle?" "I thought this was a working ranch." Levi's jaw tightened. "Had to sell most of the herd after Thomas died. Couldn't manage it all alone." He moved toward the door. "I'll let you get settled. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry." Before Hannah could respond, He was gone, his boots thumping down the stairs. She sank onto the bed, the reality of her situation finally hitting her. She had come to marry a man who seemed barely able to look at her, to a ranch that stood empty and neglected. What had she gotten herself into? The days that followed fell into an uneasy pattern. Levi would rise before dawn, work until dusk, and take his meals in the bunkhouse. Hannah busied herself cleaning the house, which had clearly not been properly tended in months. She found some comfort in the familiar tasks, but the silence of the empty rooms pressed in around her. On the fourth day, Hannah decided enough was enough. She woke early, cooked a proper breakfast, and waited on the porch. When Levi emerged from the bunkhouse, he pulled up short at the sight of her. "Good morning, Mr. Owens," she called. "Breakfast is ready." He hesitated, then approached slowly, as if she were a wild animal that might bolt. "You didn't have to do that." "I didn't come all this way to eat alone in an empty house," Hannah replied firmly. "We need to discuss our situation." Something like respect flickered in Levi's eyes. He followed her inside and sat at the table, removing his hat. Hannah placed a plate of eggs, bacon, and biscuits before him. "This looks good," he admitted, picking up his fork. Hannah sat across from him, her own plate untouched. "Mr. Owens." "Levi," he corrected quietly. "Levi," she amended. "I understand you've suffered a loss, but I've traveled over 2,000 miles based on an agreement between us." He nodded, not meeting her eyes. "If you've changed your mind about needing a wife, I should know now." His head snapped up, blue eyes meeting hers. "I haven't changed my mind." "Then why am I living in this empty house alone while you sleep in the bunkhouse?" Levi set down his fork. "I'm not good company right now, Miss Morgan." "Hannah," she insisted, "and I didn't come here expecting entertainment. I came for a partnership, as we discussed in our letters." A muscle jumped in Levi's jaw. "The ranch isn't what I described in those letters anymore. The cattle are gone, the fields untended. All I have now is this land and too many debts." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I should have," he admitted. "After Thomas died, everything fell apart. I couldn't keep up with the work or the payments to the bank. By the time I realized I should write to you, it seemed too late." Hannah absorbed this information. "So what happens now?" Levi ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "By rights, I should offer to pay your way back to Boston. It's not fair to trap you here with a failing ranch and a man who can barely keep his head above water." "And if I don't want to return to Boston?" His eyes searched her face. "Why would you want to stay?" Hannah considered the question carefully. "Because I made a choice to come here and start a new life. Because I believe two people working together can accomplish more than one alone. Because I have nowhere else to go." The last admission cost her pride, but honesty seemed important now. Levi's expression softened slightly. "This won't be an easy life." "I never expected it would be," Hannah replied, "but I'd like the chance to try." After a long moment, Levi nodded once. "All right then, we'll try." It wasn't a declaration of love or even enthusiasm, but it was a start. Hannah felt something loosen in her chest, hope, perhaps, or simply relief that she wouldn't be sent away. "We should discuss the wedding," she ventured. Levi's fork clattered against his plate. "The wedding?" "That was our arrangement," Hannah reminded him gently. "Unless you've changed your mind about that as well." "No, He cleared his throat. "There's a circuit preacher who comes through town once a month. He'll be in Douglas next week." "Next week, then," Hannah agreed, finally picking up her fork. "Now eat your breakfast before it gets cold." A ghost of a smile touched Levi's lips, the first she'd seen, before disappearing just as quickly. But it was enough to make Hannah think that perhaps, just perhaps, this might work after all. True to the new understanding between them, Levi began taking his meals in the house. Their conversations remained brief but civil, focused largely on the practical aspects of ranch life. Hannah learned that Silver Creek had once been one of the most productive cattle operations in the county before Thomas's death from pneumonia had left Levi struggling to manage alone. "We need to rebuild," Levi explained over supper one evening. "Start with a smaller herd. Work our way back up." "How do we do that without money?" Hannah asked practically. "I've saved a little. Not enough for a proper herd, but maybe enough for a start." Hannah nodded thoughtfully. "My father always said a good business needs diversification. What else could the ranch produce besides cattle?" Levi looked surprised by the question. "The soil's good for crops. We used to grow hay for the cattle, but there's plenty of land that could be planted." "Vegetables would sell in town," Hannah suggested, "and perhaps chickens for eggs. You know about farming?" Hannah smiled slightly. "I know about eating, and I know people in towns pay good money for fresh food." For the first time, Levi seemed to truly look at her not as an obligation or a complication, but as a person with ideas and value. That's not a bad idea. The next day, Levi showed Hannah around the ranch properly. The land was beautiful rolling prairie with a clear creek cutting through it, stands of cottonwood trees providing shade. The outbuildings needed repair but were solidly built. "Your father chose well when he settled here," Hannah remarked, echoing James Wilson's words. "He did," Levi agreed, a note of pride in his voice. "Came out here in '53 with nothing but determination and a good eye for land." "You love it here," Hannah observed. Levi looked across the pastures, his expression softening. "It's in my blood now. Can't imagine being anywhere else." As they walked back toward the house, Hannah paused by an overgrown patch of ground near the porch. "Was this a garden once?" Levi nodded. "My mother's. She grew herbs and flowers mostly. No one's tended it since she passed 8 years ago." Hannah knelt, running her fingers through the soil. "It's still good earth. With some work, it could produce vegetables by summer's end." "You want to restore it?" "If you don't mind," Hannah replied, looking up at him. The sun haloed his tall figure, making it difficult to read his expression. "I don't mind," Levi said softly. Then, after a pause, "She would have liked that, I think. My mother." It was the most personal thing he'd shared with her yet, and Hannah treasured it like a small gift. The following days developed a rhythm. Hannah rose early to prepare breakfast, then spent her mornings cleaning and organizing the house, which gradually began to feel less empty. In the afternoons, she worked on the garden, clearing weeds and turning soil. Levi maintained his dawn to dusk schedule, but Hannah noticed he found reasons to pass by the garden, offering suggestions or bringing her tools. Once, he returned from town with packets of seeds, carrots, beans, peas, and, to her surprise, marigolds. "Mother always said flowers keep the pests away," he explained gruffly when Hannah looked at him questioningly, "and they brighten things up." "Thank you," she replied, touched by the gesture. The day before the circuit preacher was due in Douglas, Levi returned from his work earlier than usual. Hannah was on the porch, mending one of his shirts she'd found with a torn sleeve. "I'd like to speak with you," he said, removing his hat as he approached. Hannah set aside her sewing, her heart suddenly racing. Had he changed his mind about their arrangement? Levi sat beside her on the porch step, his large hands clasped between his knees. "Tomorrow's the day the preacher comes." "Yes," Hannah agreed cautiously. "Before we go through with this, I want to be clear about something." He took a deep breath. "This ranch isn't much right now. I can offer you shelter and food, but little else. I'm not even sure I can promise it will get better." "I understand." "No, I don't think you do." He turned to face her directly. "If you want to back out, now's the time. I'll find a way to get you back to Boston. You deserve better than a struggling rancher and an empty home." Hannah studied his face, the lines of worry etched around his eyes, the stubborn set of his jaw. In just a week, she'd come to respect this man who worked himself to exhaustion each day, who spoke little but whose actions revealed his character. "I left Boston because there was nothing for me there," she said honestly. "No family, no prospects, only debts. Here at least I have purpose. I have land to tend and a chance to build something. It won't be easy. Few worthwhile things are." Levi searched her face. "You're certain?" Hannah nodded. "I am." Something shifted in his expression, a weightlifting perhaps. Then we'll head to town in the morning. We should leave by 7 to make it in time. As he rose to go, Hannah called after him. Levi, he turned back. Thank you for giving me the choice. The ghost of a smile appeared again, lingering a moment longer this time. Good night, Hannah. Good night, Levi. The wedding was a simple affair in Douglas's small white church. Hannah wore her best dress of pale blue cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Levi had shaved and donned a clean white shirt beneath his best coat, his dark hair slicked back with water. The preacher, a kind-faced elderly man named Reverend Taylor, performed the ceremony efficiently. Martha Wilson stood as witness, beaming as if she'd personally arranged the match. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Reverend Taylor declared. You may kiss your bride, Mr. Owens. Levi hesitated, then bent down to press a chaste kiss to Hannah's lips. It was brief, barely more than a touch, but Hannah felt her cheeks flush all the same. After signing the marriage certificate, they shared a meal at the hotel restaurant, a luxury that Hannah suspected strained Levi's finances, but one he insisted upon. A bride deserves a proper wedding dinner, he said quietly when she protested. The ride back to Silver Creek was silent, but not uncomfortably so. Hannah watched the landscape roll by, struck by the realization that this was now truly her home, and Levi, this quiet, hard-working man beside her, was now her husband. When they arrived at the ranch, Levi helped her down from the wagon, then surprised her by scooping her into his arms. "What are you doing?" Hannah gasped, instinctively wrapping her arms around his neck. "Carrying my wife across the threshold," Levi replied, a hint of humor in his voice. "It's tradition, isn't it?" He carried her up the porch steps and through the door, setting her down gently in the main room. For a moment, they stood close, the air between them charged with awareness of their new status. Then, Levi stepped back, clearing his throat. "I'll get your things from the wagon." That night, Hannah lay awake in the bedroom, listening to Levi's footsteps as he moved about downstairs. Eventually, she heard the front door open and close and knew he had returned to the bunkhouse. She wasn't surprised. Their marriage might be legal, but they were still virtually strangers. The rest would come with time, or it wouldn't. Either way, Hannah had made her choice, and she would make the best of it. Summer bloomed across the prairie, painting the landscape with wildflowers and tall grasses. Hannah's garden flourished under her careful tending, yielding crisp vegetables that supplemented their meals. With Levi's help, she added a small chicken coop, and soon fresh eggs became part of their daily fare. True to his word, Levi invested his savings in a small starter herd, 10 head of cattle that would form the nucleus of Silver Creek's rebirth. Hannah began accompanying him on his rounds of the ranch, learning about the land and the animals, offering suggestions that Levi increasingly took to heart. Their marriage remained unconsummated, with Levi continuing to sleep in the bunkhouse. Hannah never pressed the issue, understanding that trust needed to build between them first. But she noticed small changes, Levi lingering longer over meals, asking about her day, occasionally touching her arm or shoulder when they spoke. One evening in late July, a powerful storm rolled across the prairie. Hannah watched from the porch as dark clouds gathered on the horizon, bringing with them the scent of rain and electricity. "Storm's coming," Levi observed, joining her after finishing his chores. "Going to be a bad one. Should we be worried about the cattle?" "They've got shelter in the south pasture. They'll be fine." He squinted at the approaching wall of clouds. "We should get inside." The storm hit with ferocious intensity, howling winds that bent the cottonwoods nearly double, lightning that turned night to day, and rain so heavy it seemed to fall in sheets rather than drops. Hannah moved through the house lighting lamps as darkness fell prematurely. A tremendous crack of thunder shook the house, making Hannah jump. Seconds later, the front door burst open and Levi staggered in, drenched to the skin. "Levi!" Hannah hurried to him. "What were you doing out there?" "Checking the barn," he panted, water streaming from his clothes to puddle on the floor. "One of the doors came loose. Had to secure it before the wind took it off entirely." Hannah grabbed a blanket from the chest by the fireplace. You're soaked through. You'll catch your death." The words hung in the air between them, the echo of Thomas's fate making them both still. Then Levi accepted the blanket with a nod of thanks. "You should change," Hannah said, recovering herself. "I'll make some hot coffee." By the time Levi returned in dry clothing, Hannah had a pot of coffee brewing on the stove and had stoked the fire to a cheerful blaze. Outside, the storm continued its assault, rain lashing against the windows and thunder rolling across the sky. "Sounds like the end of the world out there," Hannah commented, handing Levi a steaming mug. He accepted it with a grateful nod, their fingers brushing. Prairie storms are something to behold, powerful enough to remind a person how small they really are. They sat before the fire, the warmth chasing away the chill. Hannah studied Levi's profile, illuminated by the dancing flames, the strong line of his jaw, the slight cleft in his chin, the way his eyelashes cast shadows on his cheeks when he blinked. "You're staring," he noted softly, not looking at her. Hannah didn't deny it. "I was thinking that I know so little about you still, despite being your wife." Levi took a sip of his coffee. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," she replied honestly, "but I'll settle for whatever you're willing to share." A particularly violent gust of wind rattled the windows. Levi seemed to gather his thoughts, his gaze fixed on the fire. "I was born in this house," he began. "My father built it with his own hands before I came along. Thomas was born 2 years later. We grew up wild, I suppose, running the prairie, learning to ride almost before we could walk properly." Hannah smiled, imagining 2 dark-haired boys racing across the grassland. "Mother taught us our letters and numbers until we were old enough to ride to the schoolhouse in Douglas. Father taught us about ranching, how to read the weather, care for the animals, respect the land." "They sound like wonderful parents." Levi nodded. "They were. Hard but fair. When Mother died, fever took her father, kept going for our sakes. But something in him dimmed. He passed 3 years later." "I'm sorry," Hannah said softly. "It's the way of things out here," Levi replied, but his voice held an edge of old pain. "Thomas and I managed well enough together. He was better with people, I was better with the land. Made a good team." "And then you lost him too," Hannah said gently. Levi's hands tightened around his mug. "Winter was harsh last year. Thomas rode out to check on a stranded heifer, got caught in a blizzard. By the time I found him, the pneumonia had already set in. Nothing the doctor could do." Hannah reached out impulsively, covering his hand with hers. To her surprise, Levi turned his palm up, interlacing their fingers. "After that, I couldn't seem to make myself care about much of anything," he continued. "Let things fall apart. The only reason I didn't lose the ranch entirely was stubbornness." "And then you sent for me," Hannah prompted when he fell silent. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Before he died, Thomas made me promise I wouldn't let the ranch die, too. Said I needed help, someone to share the burden with." His blue eyes finally met hers. "He's the one who put the advertisement in the paper." This revelation startled Hannah. "You didn't place the ad yourself?" Levi shook his head. "Thomas did it without telling me. I only found out when your first letter arrived." "So you never wanted a wife at all," Hannah said, a hollow feeling opening in her chest. "I didn't think I did," Levi corrected, his grip on her hand tightening slightly. "Figured I was better off alone. But then your letters came, and there was something about them, something honest and practical and kind." Hannah remembered those early exchanges, her describing her situation in Boston, her skills as a housekeeper, her willingness to work hard. She'd tried to be forthright, not wanting to create false expectations. Still, "I almost wrote to tell you not to come," Levi admitted. "After Thomas died, I was in no state to welcome anyone, but I'd given my word, both to him and to you." "And now?" Hannah asked, her heart beating faster. "Do you regret keeping that promise?" Levi studied their intertwined hands. "No," he said finally, the word falling between them like a stone into still water. "I don't regret it." A crash of thunder punctuated his statement, making them both jump. Their eyes met, and something shifted in Levi's expression, a softening, a warming. "I should check that the windows are secure," he said, reluctantly releasing her hand. When he returned, Hannah had refilled their coffee cups. "The storm doesn't seem to be letting up." "Might last all night," Levi agreed, reclaiming his seat beside her. "I don't think I'll make it back to the bunkhouse tonight." Hannah felt a blush creep up her neck at the implication. "You could sleep here, on the sofa, I mean." Or, she hesitated. "The bedroom is yours by right." Levi's gaze was steady, searching. "And where would you sleep?" "I could take the sofa." "I wouldn't put my wife out of her bed," Levi said softly. Hannah gathered her courage. "Then perhaps we could share it. Just to sleep," she added quickly. "It's a large bed." The fire popped and crackled in the silence that followed her suggestion. Then Levi nodded once, a decisive movement. "If you're certain." Later, as they lay side by side in the darkness, the storm still raging outside, Hannah was acutely aware of Levi's presence, the warmth radiating from his body, the sound of his breathing, the scent of soap and clean cotton. "Hannah," he said quietly, her name a question in the dark. She turned toward him, making out his silhouette in the dim light cast by the occasional flash of lightning. "Yes? Thank you for coming here. For staying, even when you found the ranch empty." "Thank you for letting me stay," she replied, her voice catching slightly. His hand found hers beneath the quilt, strong fingers closing around hers. They fell asleep that way, connected by that simple touch while the storm gradually spent its fury outside. Morning dawned clear and brilliant, the world washed clean by the night's tempest. Hannah woke to find herself alone in the bed, but the impression of Levi's head on the pillow beside hers confirmed she hadn't dreamed his presence. The scent of coffee drifted up the stairs, along with the sizzle of bacon cooking. Hannah dressed quickly and made her way to the kitchen, where she found Levi at the stove, his back to her as he tended the breakfast. "Good morning," she said, pausing in the doorway. He turned, and Hannah's breath caught at the sight of his smile, not the ghost of one she'd glimpsed before, but a full, genuine smile that transformed his face. "Good morning," he replied. "Hope you don't mind. Thought I'd make breakfast for a change." "It smells wonderful." She moved to his side, peering at the pan. "I didn't know you could cook." "Bachelor ranchers learn to fend for themselves," he said with a light shrug, "though I can't claim it's anything fancy." As they ate, Hannah noticed a new ease between them, as if the storm had washed away some invisible barrier. Levi spoke more freely, asking about her plans for the garden and offering suggestions for improving the chicken coop. "I was thinking," he said, helping himself to more coffee, "that we might ride into town today. The storm might have damaged the trail, but the wagon should make it through." "Is something wrong?" Hannah asked, concern creeping into her voice. "No," Levi assured her, "but I need to order some supplies, and I thought you might like to visit the general store. Martha's been asking after you." The simple consideration that he had thought of what might please her warmed Hannah more than she could express. "I'd like that very much." Douglas was bustling with activity when they arrived, the townspeople assessing and repairing storm damage. The general store had survived intact, and Martha Wilson greeted Hannah with an enthusiastic hug. "Just look at you," she exclaimed, holding Hannah at arm's length. "A month of married life agrees with you. There's color in your cheeks now." Hannah felt herself blushing. "It's probably just the sun. I've been working in the garden." Martha hummed, her knowing smile suggesting she thought otherwise. "And how are things at Silver Creek?" "Improving," Hannah replied honestly. "The garden's coming along nicely, and Levi's started rebuilding the herd." "Good to hear it," Martha said, patting Hannah's hand. That place needed life breathed back into it. While Levi discussed an order of fencing materials with James, Hannah browsed the store's wares. A bolt of cheerful yellow fabric caught her eye, perfect for curtains to brighten the kitchen windows. "That's a pretty color," Levi commented, appearing at her shoulder. "Like sunshine." "I was thinking it would make nice curtains for the kitchen," Hannah explained. "Then we should get it," he said decisively. When Hannah hesitated, calculating the cost, he added, "Consider it a late wedding gift." The simple generosity, offered despite their tight finances, touched Hannah deeply. "Thank you." They purchased the fabric along with a few other necessities before heading to the small cafe for lunch, another unexpected treat. "We should celebrate," Levi explained when Hannah questioned the expense. The cattle weathered the storm with no losses, and the creek's running higher than it has in months. Good signs for Silver Creek. Over a simple meal of beef stew and fresh bread, they discussed plans for the ranch crops they might plant next season, how many calves they could expect from the small herd, improvements to the house. "You've really thought about all this," Hannah observed, impressed by Levi's foresight. "I've had time," he replied, then more quietly, "and reason to plan for the future again." His eyes held hers across the table, and Hannah felt a flutter in her chest at the implication. The ride home was companionable, the wagon loaded with their purchases. As they crested the final hill before Silver Creek came into view, Levi pulled the horses to a stop. "Look at that," he said, gesturing toward the ranch below. The afternoon sun bathed the buildings in golden light, the creek glinting silver as it wound through the property. The small garden patch was a vibrant splash of green near the house, and in the distance, their modest herd of cattle grazed peacefully. "It's beautiful," Hannah breathed. "It is now," Levi agreed. "When you first arrived, all I could see was everything that was missing, everything that was gone." He turned to her, his expression earnest. "I'm sorry for how I treated you then." "You were grieving," Hannah said simply. "Yes, but you deserved better." Levi took a deep breath. "When you found the ranch empty, you could have turned right around and gone back to Boston. No one would have blamed you." "I had nowhere else to go," Hannah reminded him. "Maybe not," Levi conceded, "but you could have made the best of a bad situation without putting your heart into it. Instead, you planted a garden, added chickens, mended clothes, and made that house feel like a home again." Hannah felt her cheeks warm at his praise. "It's my home too now." "Yes, it is." Levi reached out, his calloused fingers gently tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "And I'm grateful for that every day." The touch lingered, his hand cradling her cheek. Hannah leaned into it slightly, her heart racing. "Hannah," Levi said softly, "I know our marriage started as an arrangement, but I find myself—" He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I find myself caring for you, more than I expected to, more than I thought I could, after everything." Hannah covered his hand with hers. "I care for you too, Levi." Something shifted in his expression, hope kindling in his blue eyes. Slowly, carefully, he leaned forward, giving her every chance to pull away. Instead, Hannah met him halfway. Their kiss was gentle at first, tentative, so different from the brief ceremonial one they had shared at their wedding. But then Levi's arm slipped around her waist, drawing her closer, and Hannah's hands found their way to his shoulders. When they finally broke apart, both a little breathless, Levi rested his forehead against hers. "We should head home," he murmured. "Yes," Hannah agreed, a new happiness blooming inside her. "We should." That night, for the first time, Levi didn't return to the bunkhouse. Instead, husband and wife truly became one, their union sealed with whispered words of affection and tender touches. Afterward, as Hannah lay with her head on Levi's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, he stroked her hair gently. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," he admitted. "After losing so much, I was afraid to let myself care about anything or anyone." Hannah propped herself up to look at his face. "And now?" Levi smiled, a full, unreserved smile that reached his eyes. "Now I'm glad Thomas was wiser than I was. Glad he sent for you." "So am I," Hannah whispered, laying her palm against his cheek. "So am I." The weeks that followed were filled with hard work as summer gave way to early autumn, but also with a deepening bond between Hannah and Levi. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side during the day and finding comfort in each other's arms at night. Hannah's garden yielded a bountiful harvest, producing enough vegetables not only for their table but to sell in town. The extra income, modest though it was, helped ease their financial strain. Levi's small herd thrived, with plans to expand further in the spring. One crisp September morning, Hannah woke feeling unusually queasy. She dismissed it as a passing illness, but when the feeling persisted for several days, accompanied by a strange fatigue, she began to suspect a different cause. It was Martha Wilson who confirmed her suspicions during a visit to town. "When's the baby due?" she asked casually, as Hannah selected yarn for a new project. Hannah nearly dropped the skein she was holding. What makes you think?" Martha chuckled, patting Hannah's hand. "My dear, I've seen that glow on enough women to recognize it. That, and you've been eyeing those pickled eggs like they're made of gold." Hannah placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach. "I haven't told Levi yet. I wanted to be sure." "Well, take it from someone who's birthed 4 children and helped deliver countless others you're expecting." Martha's expression softened. "He'll be overjoyed." Hannah wasn't so certain. While their relationship had blossomed into genuine love, they had never discussed children. Would Levi welcome this news, or would he worry about another mouth to feed when the ranch was still recovering? That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of pink and gold, Hannah gathered her courage. "Levi," she began, her voice slightly unsteady, "I have something to tell you." He turned to her, concerned by her tone. "Is everything all right?" Hannah took a deep breath. "I believe I'm going to have a baby. Our baby." Levi went completely still, his expression frozen somewhere between shock and wonder. For a long moment he said nothing, and Hannah felt her anxiety mounting. "A baby," he finally repeated, his voice barely audible. "Yes," Hannah confirmed, watching his face carefully. "In spring, I think." Suddenly, Levi was on his knees before her, his hands gently cradling her face. "A baby," he said again, and this time his voice cracked with emotion. "Hannah, that's—" He seemed at a loss for words. "You're happy?" she asked, needing to hear it. "Happy?" Levi laughed, a sound of pure joy that Hannah had never heard from him before. "Hannah, I don't even know what to call what I'm feeling." His hands moved to her shoulders, then down to rest reverently over her stomach. A child. Our child. Relief washed over Hannah, followed by her own surge of happiness. "I wasn't sure how you'd feel, with the ranch still struggling." "The ranch is doing better every day because of you," Levi interrupted. "And now you're giving us a family." His voice caught. "I never dared hope for so much." Hannah felt tears well in her eyes. "I love you, Levi." It was the first time either of them had spoken those words aloud, though they had shown it in countless ways. Levi's eyes widened, then softened. "I love you too, Hannah, more than I ever thought possible." As autumn deepened into winter, Silver Creek Ranch underwent a transformation. Levi worked tirelessly to prepare the house for the coming baby, reinforcing floors, fixing drafty windows, building a cradle from cottonwood with his own hands. Hannah watched him with amused affection. "The baby won't need all this for months yet." "I want everything perfect," Levi replied, not looking up from the rocking chair he was crafting. "No more empty rooms in this house." The words held layers of meaning that touched Hannah's heart. Since learning of the pregnancy, Levi had become more open about his grief, speaking more freely of Thomas, of his parents, of the loneliness that had nearly consumed him before her arrival. "When you first came," he told her one snowy evening as they sat before the fire, "and found the ranch so empty, I was ashamed. Ashamed of what I'd let it become, ashamed of not meeting you as promised." Hannah, her sewing forgotten in her lap, reached for his hand. "You were doing the best you could." "Maybe," Levi conceded. "But I remember what you looked like standing in that doorway, so brave and determined despite everything. And I thought to myself, this woman deserves better than an empty ranch and a hollow man." "You were never hollow," Hannah corrected gently. "Just hurting." Levi's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "Do you remember what I said to you that first week, when you asked me why I was sleeping in the bunkhouse?" Hannah nodded. You said the house felt too empty after Thomas died. And you know what you said back? A smile played at the corners of Levi's mouth. You said, then fill it with your laughter. Hannah blinked in surprise. I don't remember saying that. You did, Levi insisted, when I complained about how quiet the house was. And I thought you were being naive that laughter was the last thing this place would ever hear again. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. But you were right. You filled this house with life again, with garden dirt tracked across the floor, with the smell of bread baking, with humming while you worked. His free hand moved to rest on her growing belly. And now with the promise of a child's laughter too. Hannah felt her throat tighten with emotion. I'm glad I found Silver Creek, even if it was empty when I arrived. It won't ever be empty again, Levi promised, not as long as we're here together. Winter passed in a cocoon of domesticity and anticipation. The baby grew, Hannah's figure changing with each passing week. Levi treated her with a tenderness that sometimes made her laugh, insisting she rest more, taking on additional chores despite her protests that pregnancy wasn't an illness. I'm perfectly capable of collecting eggs, Hannah argued one February morning. The path to the coop is icy, Levi countered. What if you fell? Then I would get up again, Hannah replied with fond exasperation. Levi, women have been having babies since the beginning of time, most of them while continuing to work. Most women aren't my wife, he said stubbornly. Most babies aren't my child. Unable to resist his protective instinct, Hannah compromised. She would focus on indoor tasks during the worst of the winter weather, while Levi handled the outdoor chores. In exchange, he agreed to let her help with spring planting when the time came. As March arrived, bringing the first hints of spring to the prairie, Hannah began preparing in earnest for the baby's arrival. Martha Wilson visited regularly, bringing wisdom and hand-me-down baby clothes from her own grandchildren. First babies often come late, she advised when Hannah expressed impatience in her 8th month. Especially in spring, they know to wait for better weather. But Hannah's baby, it seemed, had other ideas. On a blustery day in early April, just as the first wildflowers were beginning to dot the prairie, her labor began. Levi rode for the midwife in a panic, returning with both the midwife and Martha Wilson in tow. Hannah labored through the afternoon and into the night, Levi pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door until Martha finally took pity on him. Come meet your son, she said, opening the door with a broad smile. Levi entered cautiously, his eyes immediately finding Hannah propped against pillows, tired but radiant, a small bundle cradled in her arms. A boy, he whispered, approaching the bed with reverent steps. Hannah nodded, her face glowing with exhausted joy. A healthy son. Come see him. Levi perched carefully on the edge of the bed, staring in wonder at the tiny face nestled against Hannah's breast. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and when he briefly opened his eyes, Levi's startling blue gaze. He's perfect, Levi breathed, reaching out to touch one tiny fist with his fingertip. The baby's fingers uncurled and then gripped his father's finger with surprising strength. What shall we call him? Hannah asked softly. Levi hesitated only briefly. Thomas, he suggested, if that's all right with you. Hannah's eyes filled with tears of understanding. Thomas, she agreed. Thomas Morgan Owens. As spring blossomed fully across the prairie, life at Silver Creek Ranch settled into a new rhythm centered around little Thomas. The baby thrived, growing stronger each day, his curious blue eyes taking in the world around him. Levi proved to be a natural father, as tender with his son as he was with the newborn calves that had begun to increase their herd. He would carry Thomas in a sling against his chest while doing his gentler chores, pointing out birds and animals, narrating the workings of the ranch to the attentive infant. He's too young to understand any of that, Hannah teased, watching them from the garden where she was planting her expanded crops. Never too young to learn about his inheritance, Levi replied seriously. Isn't that right, Thomas? The baby gurgled in what Levi took as agreement. See? He knows. Hannah laughed, the sound carrying across the yard, one of many laughs that now regularly filled the once empty ranch. By summer's height, Silver Creek had transformed almost beyond recognition from the neglected property Hannah had found upon her arrival. The fields were productive, the garden bountiful, the herd growing steadily. The house itself seemed to have shaken off its melancholy, with bright curtains at the windows, a rocking chair on the porch, and the sounds of family life animating its rooms. One evening, as the three of them sat on the porch watching fireflies begin to rise from the grass, Thomas sleeping peacefully in Hannah's arms, Levi turned to his wife with a contemplative expression. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" he asked. "If I'd met you at the stagecoach that day, as promised?" Hannah considered the question. "I might not have seen how much the ranch needed me," she replied thoughtfully, "and you might have kept your grief hidden longer." Levi nodded slowly. "Finding the courage to love again, to build a life with you, it's been the hardest and best thing I've ever done." "For me as well," Hannah said softly. "When I left Boston, I was desperate and afraid. I never imagined I would find not just security, but happiness." Levi leaned over to kiss her gently, careful not to disturb their sleeping son. "Thank you for not giving up on this place. On me." "Thank you for asking me to stay," Hannah replied, "for giving me a home to fill with laughter." As twilight deepened into night, the little family remained on the porch, bound together by love that had grown from the most unlikely beginnings. Silver Creek Ranch, once empty and silent, now pulsed with life and promise, a testament to the healing power of love and the courage it takes to begin again. In the years that followed, the Owens family continued to flourish. Thomas grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his father's eyes and his mother's determination. He was joined by a sister, Sarah, 2 years later, and eventually by another brother, James. The ranch prospered under Levi and Hannah's joint stewardship, becoming one of the most productive in the county. Hannah's garden experiments expanded into a profitable side business, supplying vegetables and preserves to stores as far away as Cheyenne. And through it all, laughter echoed through the halls of Silver Creek Ranch, children's giggles, Hannah's warm chuckle, and Levi's deep, rich laugh that had once seemed lost forever. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, Hannah and Levi would sit on the porch, just as they had in those early days, marveling at how far they had come from their inauspicious beginning. "I never thought an empty ranch and a mail-order bride could lead to this," Levi would say, his arm around his wife's shoulders, his voice full of wonder still. And Hannah would smile, remembering the uncertain young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach so many years ago, and the silent, grieving man who had learned to love again. "Sometimes," she would reply, leaning into his embrace, "the emptiest places are just waiting to be filled with something beautiful."